Okay, so this is problem 6.5.31, and they ask us to subtract, and we have 3z minus 15 minus the 5 minus z in the numerators, and then we have these denominators here. So what we want to notice is, the first thing, whenever you're trying to add and subtract fractions, you want to get a common denominator, and that's going to be done by identifying the LCM of each denominator, and in order to identify the LCM we have to factor. Okay, and hopefully you'll notice that these are difference of squares. Now, but instead of factoring these, we want to recognize that this is z squared minus 25 and this is 25 minus z squared. They're actually almost the same thing, they're just different by a negative. So if you'll notice over here, this z squared is positive, this 25 is negative. Here the 25 is positive and the z squared is negative. So they're actually the same, they're just different by a negative. And so what we want to do is we want to actually factor a negative out of one or the other of them. It will end up flipping it around so that we have common denominators. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to rewrite this in descending order to start with. So I have a negative z squared plus 25. And then I'm going to factor out a negative 1. And that's going to leave me with a z squared minus 25. Okay, so what you'll notice now is this inside, this z squared minus 25 is now the same as this denominator over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that with this negative 1 is I'm actually going to move it to the numerator. Now remember, you can do this because if you have something like 5/3 and the negative is written in the top, that's the same thing as writing the negative in the bottom. Okay, it's also the same thing as writing the negative out front of the fraction. Okay, so when you have a negative, it actually doesn't matter where you move it as long as you're careful about the parentheses if you need to distribute or something like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move it up, and essentially when I move it up here, because I have a subtraction sign, I would end up subtracting a negative, so there would be two negatives here, which would actually make this positive. Okay. So what I actually have now, let me rewrite it so we can see what we have. We have 3z minus 15 over z squared minus 25, and then we have plus 5 minus z over z squared minus 25. This plus sign is coming from the fact that we moved the negative up, and we already had we had a subtraction sign up there, so we were subtracting a negative, which made it positive. Okay, so now that we have common denominators, and these are common denominators, now we can bring our numerators together and then just collect like terms in the numerator. So we bring our numerators together, we're going to write it all over the common denominator. And then now we want to simplify the numerator. So if we collect like terms, we have a 3z here and a minus z there, so that's a 2z. And then we have a negative 15 and a positive 5, so that's a negative 10. And this is over z squared minus 25. Now, hopefully we notice that the numerator has a greatest common factor of a 2, and the denominator is the difference of squares. And since these factor into things that have common factors, we do want to factor it further, or we want to factor it so that we can see what's going to cancel. So in the numerator, I would take out a 2, and I would be left with z minus 5. In the denominator, I would apply my difference of squares formula, z minus 5 and z plus 5. And then you'll notice here that you have z minus 5s that are the same, so those will cancel. And we'll be left with, I'm going to write it over here, we'll be left with a 2 over a z plus 5. Okay, so that would be your answer in this problem.